Good morning, everyone. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Am I audible to all of you? Am I audible? Okay, fine. So let us discuss about the things that we were discussing in the last class. We were discussing about cold waves, right? So let us start with the cold waves. Right. So we were discussing about cold waves, and we have talked about what exactly is the definition, right? What is the definition? That it is the abnormally or extremely low temperature in the near surface atmosphere. In the near surface atmosphere, when we have extremely low temperature, that condition we call as cold wave, right? And the duration is from December to February, and it only lasts for few days to few weeks, right? And then the criteria also we have talked about. We have also talked about the criteria. So before that, vulnerable area. So the dark color area, right? So this part in Uttar Pradesh, some parts of, let's say, Rajasthan, then some parts of Haryana and all. So those areas are vulnerable to the cold waves. Fine. So those are the areas vulnerable to cold waves. Then we talked about the criteria, right? So criteria is very similar. Criteria is very similar to the criteria that we have discussed for heat waves, right? So for cold waves, the minimum temperature should be how much? Should be 10 degrees Celsius or less for plain area, and 0 degrees Celsius or less for hilly areas, right? So that is the temperature criteria. Now, based on that, there are, let's say, two criteria based on departure from normal, right? So normal से departure कितना होना चाहिए? For heat waves it was 4.5 to 6.4 degree Celsius for heat waves. यहाँ पे सिर्फ minus है, minus 4.5 to minus 6.4 degree Celsius. That is the criteria for cold waves. And for severe cold wave, the criteria is departure from normal, then more than minus 6.4 degrees Celsius. If that departure is there, then we will be calling it as severe cold wave. Then actual minimum temperature criteria is also there. What is the actual minimum temperature criteria? For cold waves, the actual minimum temperature should be less than or equal to 4 degrees Celsius. And for severe cold wave, it should be less than or equal to 2 degrees Celsius, right? So that is what is the actual minimum criteria, minimum temperature criteria for cold waves, right? And these kind of conditions should last for 2 consecutive days in two let's say stations of meteorological subdivision. Of the meteorological subdivision, at least 2 stations should show these kind of conditions for at least 2 consecutive days. Then only we will be able to alert the area as cold wave, let's say, affected area, right? And then criteria is also there for coastal regions. In coastal regions, what is the criteria? Criteria is if the departure from normal temperature is by minus 4.5 degrees Celsius, then it would be cold wave. Minus 4.5 degrees Celsius or lesser, then it would be cold wave. Or the minimum temperature falls below 15 degrees Celsius, then also we will be calling it as cold wave for coastal areas. Okay, so that is what is the cold wave for coastal areas. Now, causes. Now, this is the new point that we will be talking about, causes of cold waves in India. What are the causes of cold waves in India? First and the most important is inflow of cold, dry continental air mass from Himalayan region. Right, from Himalayan region, even you can call from, let's say, Central Asian region, there would be some flow of cold and dry air mass, and that is the prime reason for the occurrence of cold waves in India. First. Second, approach of western disturbances lead to cold wave conditions in the northern belt, right? Western disturbances, I hope you must be aware of western disturbances. These are upper, let's say, upper atmospheric phenomenon that come to India and other parts of, let's say, South Asia from Mediterranean Sea, right? So that is what is western disturbances. So western disturbances, you must be aware, bring rainfall, bring snowfall in the northern northwestern part of our country, and that also leads to occurrence of cold wave conditions. Then persistent low clouding over North Indian plains. Now, how persistent low clouding has its impact on cold waves? Low clouds prevent solar insolation. What they do, they prevent solar insolation. If clouds are there, obviously sun rays won't be able to penetrate, right? You must have witnessed, those who are there in northern parts of our country, you must be aware that in winter season there would be some days where we won't be able to see sun, right? So those days are related to this. So when we have low clouding, then the insolation will not occur, and if insolation will not occur, obviously that would lead to fall in the temperature of earth, causing cold waves. Then sun's apparent shift towards south, right? So this is the major cause of winter. This is the major cause of winter for northern hemisphere. If the sun goes towards if the apparent movement of sun is towards the southern hemisphere, there would be winter season for northern hemisphere. And then if these conditions are also there, then that winter season would get severe, leading to cold waves. And then high pressure systems in northern India cause subsidence of cold air. Right? If high pressure systems are there in northern India, it would lead to subsidence of cold air, and that would bring cold wave conditions in India. Fine. So these are the, let's say, these are the causes why we have cold wave in India. First is cold and dry continental air mass coming from Himalayas. Second, western disturbances. Third, presence of low clouding. Then apparent movement of sun towards south, and presence of high pressure system. Fine. So these are the causes of cold waves in India. I hope it is clear. Next, what is the impact? What is the impact of cold waves? Firstly, health impact we will talk about. Right. So there are some specific cold wave impacts that you should be aware of. And if question is there, try to use these terms. Because otherwise the let's say impact written would be very general. Right? So try to use these terms. Health impact. What is the health impact? Hypothermia is the health impact. What is hypothermia? It is defined as a lowered core body temperature, usually below 34.4 degree Celsius. Now our body temperature is 37. If the temperature goes below 34.4 degree Celsius, then that condition would be considered as hypothermia. Right? That condition is hypothermia. Secondly, frostbite. Frostbite would also occur. Right? So what is frostbite? Frostbite is freezing of body tissue, often accompanied with hypothermia. Now when hypothermia occurs, that means when body temperature is going below 34.4 degrees Celsius, it may lead to freezing of body tissues, and that condition is called as frostbite. And then dehydration, loss of body fluid to the point of slowing or preventing normal body functions. Now there might be loss of body fluids also when cold waves occur, and that may lead to, let's say, lack of availability of enough fluid that is required for our body functions. Dehydration increases chance of becoming a cold weather casualty, right? Which is the, let's say, event that is considered as severe. It is this dehydration. Because in dehydration, body functions, vital body functions would reduce, they may stop, and that is a state which may be fatal. Fine. So these are the health impact. Try to use these terms if the question is there on impacts of cold waves. Okay. Next now apart from health impact, there would be impact on other sectors as well. For example, in economic sector, there would be impact. Firstly, agriculture. So cold wave and frost damage crops from illnesses, including diseases like black rust, white rust, late blight, etc. right? So there would be number of diseases that would affect our agricultural crop, and more often than not, these diseases are fungal diseases. So whenever cold waves are there or frost is there, there would be occurrence of these diseases, and then the productivity of agriculture would fall. Okay? Then cold wave also cause a variety of physiological disruption in germination, growth, flowering, yield, and storage life. Right. So whatever temperature, whatever sufficient, let's say, minimum temperature is required for the germination of seeds, for flowering, fruiting, etc. All those activities would be affected if the temperature falls below that minimum level. Right? And thus again productivity would be affected. So it's not that only heat waves will affect the productivity of agriculture, it would also have its impact. Cold wave also would have its impact on the agriculture, and agriculture especially right, especially, sorry, not orchids, orchards. That means the let's say farming of fruit related trees. That is more affected because of cold waves. Right, cold waves and frost have their impact on the production of fruits in our country. Then, extreme variations in temperature may affect fertility rate in animals. Fertility rate in animals would also be affected during the optimum breeding season. So, fertility rate again in animals would be affected. That will have its impact on the productivity of agriculture. Right? When we talk about fertility of animals, we are talking about all the animals that are there in animal husbandry. Okay? Not audible? Is it the case with everyone? Am I audible to all of you? आवाज आ रही है? Audible, Pratibha, maybe at your end some problem is there. Please check. Fine. So that is what is the impact on agriculture. Then there would be disturbances on the transportation activity as well. Right. Often cold waves are associated with dense fog, and that fog affects airports. That fog affects highways, and even railway routes would be disturbed because of the dense fog which is associated with cold waves. So if these transportation related activities are affected, obviously there would be some economic impact on the let's say people, organizations due to cold waves. Right. So that is also the impact. Then there would be impact on tourism as well. There would be impact on tourism. Now, tourism would be affected both in positive way as well as negative way, because let's say if cold waves are there, then there is a chance that more snowfall would be occurring in different parts of India, and that will, let's say, attract more and more tourism. But at the same time, if the transportation is disrupted, tourism activity would be affected negatively. Right? And then lastly, environmental impact would also be there. For example, rising energy consumption will cause pollution and climate change. Right? Heating requirements would increase during cold wave conditions, leading to pollution and climate change. Okay? So those are the impacts of cold wave that you should be aware of. See, often when causes and impacts of heat wave and cold waves are asked, it might be the case बहुत general answer लिखा जाएगा. So make sure you are aware of these specific causes and specific impacts of cold waves and heat waves. These are rare events, Kishan. These are rare events. अगर volcanic eruption होता है, then what will happen? The volcanic eruption will lead to, let's say, release of gases and dust particles. Those gases will ultimately form clouds, and then there would be availability of dust particles. So clouds would be there, dust particles would be there. Incoming solar radiations will not be allowed to penetrate. So it is very similar to low clouding conditions. So this we talked about persistent low clouding. So it is very similar to that. Okay. Next is mitigation steps for cold waves in India. What we are doing for the mitigation of cold waves in India? Firstly, vulnerability mapping. Vulnerability mapping. You need to know which area is vulnerable to cold waves. So that is what is done by IMD. IMD has created climate hazard and vulnerability atlas of India, covering major meteorological disasters, major meteorological hazards, including cold waves. Right. So IMD ने एक climate hazard and vulnerability atlas of India बनाया, wherein they are highlighting various areas that are vulnerable to climatological disasters, climatological hazards, including cold waves. So that is being done by IMD. Secondly, do we get early warning? Early warning and forecast. Do we get early warning and forecast? Yes, right. The way we get early warning and forecast for heat waves, same cold waves, for cold waves also, IMD and NDMA, IMD and NDMA have developed an impact based early warning system using color coding: yellow, orange, red, right? Yellow, orange, red. Based on these kind of color coding, we get alerts that, okay, your area has, let's say, orange alert, red alert, yellow alert, like that. Okay? Then district level forecasts are provided by IMD as well. Apart from, let's say, regional forecasts, district level forecasts are provided by IMD. And that district level forecast is 3 to 5 days in advance. 3 to 5 days in advance, we will tell that district that, okay, your district will be affected by cold wave conditions. Fine. Now, if, let's say, let me tell you one point that you can write in way forward. So in way forward, you can write, say, see, the forecast is at district level. At district level, there is a need to have, let's say, localized forecasts as well, right? For example, taluka level forecast would be more beneficial for people to prepare. So that may be a point that you can add in way forward. Then fog alerts are also provided, right? Apart from cold wave alerts, fog alerts are also provided in India. Fine. So those are two important steps that we have taken. Then some structural measures are there. Structural measures are there. You must be aware that night shelters, rain baseras are there for homeless people, right? So night shelters, we make sure that people, especially that are living on roads, are not affected by cold wave, and that's why for them we come up with night shelters. Then uninterrupted power supply. For this, we have ensured that proper infrastructure is there to ensure that there is uninterrupted power supply. Then some non-structural measures are also there. What are non-structural measures? SOPs, standard operating procedures, have been put forward by Ministry of Health for the treatment of patients that are affected by the cold waves. Right? Cold waves have their specific impact. So the healthcare staff should be aware what exactly they are supposed to do, and that kind of SOPs, those kind of SOPs are provided by the Ministry of Health. Then NDMA comes up with do's and don'ts, what you are supposed to do and what you are supposed to avoid in case of cold waves. So one of the don'ts is that the angetis, right? Angetis, that means a makeshift bonfire. So they say that you should not put it in your house and sleep, right? Angetis should not be there inside your room. Why? Because it would lead to formation of black carbon particles, those particulate matter particles, and that may lead to death, right? That may lead to death, and that has happened last year only. Last year means 2024-25 winter season. That has happened in Delhi, right? One of the, let's say, families, they put that angeti inside the house and they slept. And next day means they were not there, right? So that is what may happen, and that is what is one of the don'ts that is highlighted by NDMA. Okay? So these are some measures that are being taken by us. Now there are some other measures as well. For example, fog devices for railways. Fog devices for railways are used, right? Similarly, there are frost to protect crops from frost. Mulching can be used. Mulching, right? So those are some other measures that can be used but they are very, let's say, very localized initiatives. They are very localized initiative where it is required only in those areas we take these kind of steps. Okay, so these are the steps that we take for handling of cold waves in India. What NDMA is suggesting, what are the NDMA guidelines for cold waves, NDMA guidelines for cold waves and frost. Okay, so firstly, the NDMA guideline says that you should understand the risk related to, you should carry out the analysis related to hazard, vulnerability, and the risk. Right. So, firstly, hazard analysis, identifying areas prone to cold wave occurrence. Which areas have the chances of occurrence of cold waves? So, identify those areas. Secondly, vulnerability analysis, wherein you will be understanding which population is more vulnerable to cold waves, right? So, accessing populations and sectors at risk, assessing population and sectors at risk. Then risk analysis, evaluating potential damage, कितना damage हो सकता है, right? In hazard, you will be identifying areas vulnerable. In vulnerability analysis, you will be identifying people or let's say sectors vulnerable. And in third, in risk analysis, you will try to understand कि कितना damage हो सकता है, what is the potential, what is the major of damage that may happen in a particular area to a particular sector because of cold wave. So all those analysis should be carried out as per NDMA first. Second, early warning, dissemination and communication strategy. Early warning, dissemination. Early warning system is there. Like IMD is coming up with their alerts. But what about dissemination of that early warning? So NDMA is suggesting that we should have system for the dissemination of early warning. So timely advisory and impact based forecast warning for cold waves in collaboration with IMD. Timely advisory and impact based forecast. Then dissemination of cold waves related information through mass media to reach the last person as soon as possible. First of all, you need timely advisory and forecast wherein IMD has its role, but at the same time that needs to be that needs to be relayed to the people that are there in the different sectors, different, let's say, localities. उन लोगों तक पहुंचनी चाहिए, and for that NDMA is suggesting that you should have a special dedicated mechanism which should be based on mass media. Okay, so that's what is recommended by NDMA. Then preparing an action plan. Preparing an action plan for dealing with cold wave with participation from. Now, whenever you come up with the action plan, you should make sure that the action plan is prepared by the state. Action plan is prepared at the state level. But when state government do that, state government should also try to take into account the participation of district government, municipal health agencies, disaster management authorities, and local partners. So by taking into account all the stakeholders, you should come up with the action plan. And this action plan is very important because you should not firefight. You should not firefight because pressure situation में पता नहीं चलता कि क्या करना है. And that's why you should be aware कि okay, these are the steps that I am supposed to take in case of cold wave. And that's why prepare action plan. Okay? Then the state should constitute dedicated cold wave committee. Dedicated cold wave committee chaired by state disaster management authority and will have representation from all different sectors, different departments like health, agriculture, animal husbandry, etc. Right? A dedicated cold wave committee chahiye for the handling of cold wave. That they should be taking steps. They should be, let's say, guiding the authorities that okay, do this. You can target this particular area like that. So that cold wave committee should be there, and that cold wave committee should be headed by the SDMA, State Disaster Management Authority, and it should have representatives from sectors like health, agriculture, and animal husbandry, because we have seen that these are those sectors which are worst affected sectors. Mulching क्या होता है? Just a minute. So what is mulching? Mulching is the activity, or it is a kind of process wherein we make sure that the soil is covered with some material, so that contact of soil with the atmosphere, let's say sun rays or frost, is reduced. We want to reduce the contact of soil with, let's say, sun rays or with frost. For that, we make sure that soil is covered with something. That something can be natural, that something can be artificial as well. Right? So let me show you mulching paper. Let me show you mulching paper. So often this is the practice that they use in areas where water scarcity is there. So can you see this paper? Can you see this paper? So it is a kind of, let's say, plastic which is put on the soil, and we will make holes in that plastic, and in that holes we'll plant the crops, so that we are able to conserve water, so that we are able to protect the crops from the frost. Okay, so this is what is mulching. This practice is mulching. Now here we have used these, let's say, plastic papers, but it can be the case that we use some natural materials, like, let's say, leaves can be used, right? So this will help us retain the soil moisture. This will help us protect the protect the soil from frost. Okay, I hope it is clear. Next now, prevention and mitigation measures. So once you are done with the plants, you should move for prevention and mitigation measures, wherein well planned out and timely arrangements for day and night shelters for homeless. Prevention and mitigation you will be focusing on creating shelters, because we cannot prevent, we cannot, let's say, stop the occurrence of cold waves. What we can do, we can prevent the loss of life, we can prevent the damage that they may cause. So that's why your focus should be on creation of shelters. Then preparation for necessary medical facilities. Medical facilities should also be prepared, because it might be the case that everyone is not in need of shelters. They would need some medical treatment, so medical facilities should be there. Then preventing crops from cold waves, and also preventing cold weather, also promoting cold weather sustainable crops. Preventing crops from cold weather, how we can do this? We can do this with the help of mulching. And promoting cold weather sustainable crops. The way we are promoting, the way we are, let's say, going for heat tolerant crops, cold tolerant crops should also be promoted. That is what are the prevention and mitigation measures that are suggested by NDMA. Then preparedness and response measures. Preparedness and response. That means, despite all these things, there would be occurrence of cold waves. So you should be prepared. You should provide the, let's say, relief and rescue support to the people that are affected. So this preparedness and response aims at rescuing those who are affected or likely to be affected by hazard. यहाँ पे हम क्या करेंगे? We'll be rescuing people if they are there in some, let's say, some open area where they are feeling lots of cold because of the cold wave. Obviously, we'll be rescuing them. We'll make sure that their body temperature is normalized. Their body temperature is normalized. So next is capacity building and training program. Capacity building is an ongoing process. It is an ongoing process that equips officials, stakeholders, and communities to perform their functions in a better manner during a crisis or disaster. Obviously, capacity building and training, it is an ongoing program, right? The nature of disaster would keep on changing. The nature of disaster would keep on changing. The methods of handling of disaster would also keep on changing. And that's why we need to make sure that people who are working in this particular sector, they are trained. The local authorities, the local administrative authorities are trained, and their capacities are enhanced every now and then. So it is an ongoing process. As cold wave or frost is localized phenomenon, the state government must draw location-specific training, and capacity building plans, focus on sector-specific stakeholders, target groups, including senior/middle level officers, staffs, media personnel, DDMA officials, local authorities, NGOs, etc. Right? So those people. Why? Because cold waves and frost are localized phenomenon. Right? It might not be helpful for, let's say, southern states, because southern states hardly get cold wave condition. So it is a localized phenomenon. Identify the localized area where cold wave impact would be there, and train those people, train the sector specific people. For example, medical staff, they should be aware what they are supposed to do if a person with hypothermia, frostbite comes to their let's say hospital, right? So these kind of trainings, this kind of training you will have to give to people working in those areas which are vulnerable to cold waves, right? So that is what is NDMA guidelines for cold waves. Okay. Mulching paper, it is primarily used in drought prone areas only, that I have told you. Okay. Mulching paper is biodegradable or not? No, often it is not biodegradable. Right? But generally it is recollected, right? Recycling uski hum karte hain. It is not biodegradable. It is plastic paper. Okay. So that is what is NDMA guidelines. That is what is NDMA guidelines. Now we will be moving to the next disaster, and that is forest fire. Okay. Fine. If you have doubts in heat waves, cold waves, please ask. Otherwise, let's move to forest fire. Any doubt? So this is a forest fire picture from Bandipur in Karnataka, right? I hope you must be aware of Bandipur Tiger Reserve. So there some forest fire was there. So this is the picture from that forest. Now, forest fire is a regular phenomenon in our country observed during summers. It is a regular phenomenon. It's not a sporadic event कि once in a while आ गया. हमें नहीं पता चलता है, right? It is we who hardly, let's say, get idea about the occurrence of these forest fire instances. But it is a very regular phenomenon. And I was going through one Forest Survey of India report. They said that in 1 year they have witnessed more than 3 lakh events of forest fire. Can you imagine that? More than 3 lakh events across India, right? So all means small, large forest fire instances, more than 3 lakh such instances they have witnessed. Yes, Khushbu, yes, I'll do that. पर थोड़ा सा टाइम दीजिएगा मुझे, एकदम से मुझे ये अरेंज करने में एक दो दिन दीजिए. I'll make sure that you get these things. ठीक है? Fine. So forest fire is a regular phenomenon. Next point. Now, as per Forest Survey of India, approximately 55% of forest in India are expected to have occasional fires. 55% will have occasional fires, right? Next, approximately 7% moderately frequent fires. Then approximately 2.5% forest will be having high incidence of forest. And then approximately 36% of India's forests have not yet been exposed to fires of any real significance. So we can say that this is around 65% of forest in India. 65% of forest in India is vulnerable to the occurrence of forest fire. Right? It may be, let's say, occasional, it may be moderate, it may be severe, but around 64% of forest in India is vulnerable to the occurrence of forest fire. Occasional means once in a while we have seen it. It's not a frequent phenomenon in that particular region. Once in a while, इस साल हुआ, अगले 2-3 साल नहीं हुआ और फिर से हो गया. That is what is occasional. ठीक है? Yes, mulching may give rise to microplastic. Okay. So coming back, so these are the numbers from Forest Survey of India's report. These are the numbers from Forest Survey of India's report. Official numbers these are. Okay. Now, what is the definition? A forest fire, which is also called as wildfires. क्यों wildfire? क्योंकि अगर forest नहीं है, grasslands है, तो हम उसे forest fire नहीं कह पाएंगे. That's why wildfire. So, a forest fire or wildfire is an uncontrolled and non-prescribed combustion. Non-prescribed means occurring randomly, right? Occurring randomly. Uncontrolled and non-prescribed combustion or burning of plants in a natural setting. कहाँ होता है ये? Natural setting में जो fires होते हैं उन्हें हम कहते हैं forest fire. Natural setting such as forest और grasslands. Forest grasslands में जो fires होते हैं उन्हें हम wildfire या forest fire कहते हैं. In Australia, they have small bushes. And in those bushes, if fire occur, they call it as bushfire. ठीक है, वो भी term use होता है, but that term more often than not is used in Australia. So that's what is the definition. What are the recent instances? Recent instances are of Uttarakhand, Tamil Nadu, and Telangana. Uttarakhand, Tamil Nadu, Telangana have witnessed the recent instances of forest fire in India of significant nature. Right? ऐसे बहुत है, पर ये significant थे जिसमें हमें ज़्यादा loss देखने को मिला of because of forest fire. ठीक है. Uttarakhand is especially vulnerable to forest fire because of a variety of plant called as cheer pine. Cheer pine, right? So cheer pine was introduced in Uttarakhand by Britishers. It is not a native species of Uttarakhand. It was introduced by Britishers in that area, and the leaves of cheer pine are flammable in nature. So when leaves fall, they have more tendency to catch fire because of, let's say, heat conditions. During dry season, during warmer season, there would be, let's say, catching of fire by the leaves of cheer pine. And that's why in Uttarakhand, the forest department, what they do, they promote that you come up with the leaves of, they ask people that you should come up with the leaves of these cheer pine, will pay you money. Right? Just to protect forests, people, if they are, let's say, incentivized that, okay, collect these leaves, bring it to us and we'll pay you the money. So that is what is done in Uttarakhand. Okay? To protect the forest in Uttarakhand. So these are the recent instances of fire. Now, this is the area which is vulnerable to forest fire in India. So you can see the dark color. So this dark color area, Uttarakhand, this dark color, even northeastern states are extremely fire prone forest areas. They are extremely forest fire prone areas. Then little less dark we have, it is this Karnataka, parts of, let's say, Arunachal Pradesh, this Jharkhand, UP, then even Tamil Nadu. These are the areas which are relatively less vulnerable. And then the vulnerability goes on reducing. Okay, so these are the states that are vulnerable to the occurrence of forest fires in India. So you can say that it is the central Indian forest which is more vulnerable to occurrence of forest fire, along with northeastern states and Uttarakhand. Okay, so that way you can mention about the vulnerable areas. Next, so extremely fire prone areas are Andhra Pradesh, Assam, Chhattisgarh, Odisha, Maharashtra, Madhya Pradesh, Manipur, Mizoram, Nagaland, and Uttarakhand. So these are the states that are prone to the occurrence of forest fire. So agar regionally likhna hai, to you should write that it is central Indian states and northeastern states along with Uttarakhand. Okay. Now, causes. What are the causes of forest fire? See, no need to write do's and don'ts. See, there will be no question that write do's and don'ts for cold waves. पर अगर question आता है, and if the question is asking you that what are the steps that are being taken by the authorities, then one of the points should be that NDMA comes up with a list of do's and don'ts for people, so that people would be aware that what action they are supposed to take and what things they are supposed to avoid during cold waves. So that would be the point. Only one point would be there. You don't have to list do's and don'ts. हाँ, अगर स्कोप है तो आप कर सकते हो, राइट। एक दो पॉइंट डूज के लिख दीजिए, एक दो पॉइंट डोंट्स के लिख दीजिए. We are coming to that, Shubham. We are coming to that. So let me tell you this. Let me tell you this. So if you read this point, Shubham, if you read this point, okay, so we are coming to that point. Just a minute. Fine. So now, causes of forest fire. Firstly, natural causes. What are the natural causes of forest fire? First, there should be availability of fuel. Right? Availability of fuel is the prerequisite for the occurrence of forest fire. If the fuel is not there, if dry leaves are not there, dry grasses are not there, then there would be no occurrence of forest fire, right? So availability of fuel in the form of dry leaves, litter should be there, then only forest fire would occur first. Then lightning. What may trigger forest fire? The trigger may be natural, trigger may be anthropogenic. So lightning may happen and that may trigger forest fire. Secondly, dry weather conditions, which are created by El Nino kind of conditions. Because in dry weather we have, let's say, dry litter, then more temperature conditions would be there. So these kind of conditions are more favorable for the occurrence of forest fire, right? So dry weather conditions should be there. Then wind speed would aid the spread of forest fire. If, let's say, forest fire has occurred in a particular area, and if the conditions are windy conditions, then there would be spread of forest fire that would occur. So these are some natural factors that are responsible for the occurrence of forest fire. Now, in case of these are forest fire causes for India. In case of world, you can add volcanic eruptions. Volcanic eruption may also be considered as a cause for the occurrence of forest fire naturally, but not in case of India. Next, anthropogenic causes. What are the anthropogenic causes? First of all, let me tell you that in India, again, this is the official number. More than 95% of instances of forest fire are anthropogenic. It is we human beings who are creating this kind of problem, right? So let us try to understand what are the anthropogenic. Anthropogenic means human induced causes. So which are those human induced causes? Firstly, shifting cultivation. And I hope you must be aware which are the states that are let's say vulnerable, that are prone to forest fire because of shifting cultivation. It would be northeastern states. In northeastern states, we carry out shifting cultivation and that leads to forest fire. Then burning farm residue. Often there are farming areas, there are farm lands just the vicinity, in just vicinity of forest, right? बहुत नजदीक है फॉरेस्ट के कुछ फार्म लैंड्स, और अगर उन फार्म लैंड्स पे हम क्रॉप रेसिड्यू वगैरह बर्न करते हैं, देर इज ए चांस दैट दैट फायर वुड अफेक्ट द नियर बाय फॉरेस्ट एज वेल. ठीक. देन unattended bonfires. Tourists often, let's say, do bonfires in the forest areas, and if those bonfires are unattended, for example, they left, tourists left and they did not, let's say, douse that forest fire, that bonfire, then there is a chance that it would spread to the forest area and it may lead to forest fire. Then use of fire by gatherers of forest produce. This is also one of the important reasons for the occurrence of forest fire. Now, what we do, the forest gatherers. What are forest gatherers? These are tribal people that collect their, let's say, minor forest produce from the forest area, and based on that minor forest produce, they derive their livelihood. Minor forest produce क्या हो सकता है? It can be, minor forest produce can be in the form of leaves, branches, nuts, fruits, etc. Right? जो fallen branches है, leaves है, fruits है, nuts है, they may be collected by tribal people, they may be collected by these forest gatherers, and then by selling those, they would be able to earn their livelihood, right? Now, often these forest producers, forest gatherers, what they do, they, in order to get more produce, they set the fire, the forest on fire, right? For example, Tendu leaf collectors. Tendu leaf collectors set fire in the summer season to promote better flush of leaves. उन्हें क्या चाहिए? उन्हें तेंदू लीव्स चाहिए. तो अगर तेंदू लीव्स मान लेते इन रेनी सीजन, इफ दे वांट गुड produce of tendu leaves, what they do in summer season, they put the fire in forest. Why? Because when fire occurs, it would add some nutrients to soil, and those nutrients would be used by the, let's say, tendu plant, tendu plant, and that would lead to, let's say, more production in tendu leaves. So that is what is the practice that is being done by the gatherers of forest produce, which is harmful. Next, intentional fires are also there. Intentionally also people set fire, right? बदला लेने के लिए कि तूने मेरा ये जलाया, मैं तेरा वो जला दूंगा, right? So that is also one of the let's say causes of fire. Intentional fires are also there, right? Even there might be some tussle between forest bureaucracy and local people in that area. So to just, let's say, just to make sure that the task of forest bureaucracy is increased, the forest may be set on fire. Intentionally also sometimes it is done, and then it is climate change. Climate change is also one of the important reasons. Fine. So these are the causes of climate. These are the causes of forest fire in India. Next, effects. Effects. Now you must be aware of the effects of forest fire. What will happen? Firstly, environmental impact, loss of habitat and biodiversity. If forest is getting burned, the habitat of wildlife would be affected. That is one, and that would have its impact on the biodiversity of that areas as well. For example, koalas, right? Bushfires occurred in Australia. 2019-2020 summer for Australia. 2019-2020 summer for Australia, they faced intense bushfire. And those intense bushfires led to burning of eucalyptus crops, which are eucalyptus plants, which are considered as, let's say, habitat of koalas. Koalas is a kind of animal, very innocent looking animal. So those koalas, they depend on eucalyptus trees, but those eucalyptus trees were affected by bushfires of 2019-2020. That compelled these koalas to move from their habitat to some other habitat. And during that particular bushfire, many koalas also died because of the forest fire. Okay, so impact would be there on biodiversity as well. Next, increased penetration of invasive species is another impact of forest fire. Increased penetration of invasive species. Imagine a scenario wherein in a forest fire has occurred, and most of the trees have burned, let's say, have been burned because of that forest fire. So if that is the case, there would be lack of availability of any competition for some invasive species that is getting introduced in that area. So invasive species, given their characteristics, like, let's say, they may grow in a very short span of time, and that's why, as competition is not there, as they can grow in a very short span of time, they would be grow like anything in that area, and they would dominate that area at the cost of native species. So that is also one of the important impacts, environmental impact, because we know that invasive alien species are a threat to biodiversity. They would make sure that the local species are deprived of the resources. And if local species are deprived of the resources, obviously local species won't be able to survive. Then soil erosion would occur, right? Why soil was there? Why soil was intact in that area? Because trees were there, grasses were there. But if because of forest fire they are not there, obviously soil particles will be loosened up. They would be eroded with the factors like wind, water, etc. Then reduction in water holding capacity. Water holding capacity would also reduce. Why? Because the litter, the litter that is present, right? Humus, for example, humus that is present in the soil is one of the major factors that holds water in soil. But if humus is not there, litter is not there, then water holding capacity would also reduce. Next, loss of carbon sink. Obviously, carbon sink will be affected. Forests, they act as a carbon sink. They use CO2 and they store that CO2 in them. And that's why if forests are not there, trees are not there, carbon sink would be lost. Then increase pollution. It increases, forest fires increases pollution. Why? Because when we burn, when forest fire occur, it is burning of biomass. Biomass is burned. And when this biomass is burned, there would be emission of gases like methane, there would be emission of carbon monoxide, there would be emission of particulate matter that would lead to pollution, right? Methane will contribute to climate change, and carbon monoxide and particulate matter would contribute to pollution. Okay? So that is what is the environmental impact. Then economic impact would be there. Economic impact, timber would be lost, right? It might be the case that timber can be used for some, let's say, economic activities. Timber resources, non-timber resources would be lost, and that is one of the economic impact of the forest fire. Then loss of livelihood for tribal communities. Those forest gatherers of tendu leaves, gatherers of nuts, branches, leaves, etc., they would lose their livelihood. And similarly, tourism would also be affected. If forest was attracting tourists, and if forest is not there because of forest fire, obviously tourism would be affected. Then it may lead to disasters like floods. Forest fire may lead to disasters like floods. How? Because if, let's say, tree cover is not there, green cover is not there, water will flow in a fast manner. There would be no obstacle for the water to, let's say, percolate inside the ground. And that's why there would be more occurrence of floods. And lastly, climate change. Climate change is a cause of forest fire, and it is also the impact of forest fire. Why? Because when, let's say, dry conditions occur because of climate change, it would lead to forest fire. And when forest fire occurs, there would be release of gases like methane, and that will have its impact on climate change again. Right? So they fuel each other. More climate change, more forest fire. More forest fire, then again more climate change. That way. Okay? So these are the impacts that we have of forest fire. I hope it is clear. Here in Himachal, forest fires are intentionally by people as they use to say that it is a traditional method to overcome long duration of rain. अच्छा, ठीक है, देख लीजिए फिर intentional है, fine. So intentionally also that is carried out. Now this may be some misconception. This may be misconception, right? Because see, this may be traditional knowledge. And often traditional knowledge has an angle of mysticism as well. Traditional knowledge we should use a traditional knowledge, but that traditional knowledge should have the backing of science, right? Because often traditional knowledge, it is seen that it has some mystic angle as well. So we'll have to avoid that angle. Now, steps taken for handling forest fires in India. What are the steps that we have taken? See, NDMA guidelines are not there. We will have to rely on these steps, or we have taken these steps in order to handle forest fires. So let us try to understand. First, Forest Survey of India has prepared a national level vulnerability map, which we have seen. Right? The vulnerability map of forest fire has been prepared by Forest Survey of India, and they have categorized different forests based upon their vulnerability. That also we have seen. Then, monitoring and early warning system by Forest Survey of India. Forest Survey of India, through, let's say, patrolling, through the images that they get from satellites. So satellites from, let's say, satellites from USA are used for forest fire purposes. And those satellites were also used by the authorities in order to understand stubble burning instances in Punjab and Haryana. Right? So based upon patrolling, ground patrolling based upon the satellite images. We are trying to come up with the forecast, and that is done by Forest Survey of India. Then creation and maintenance of fire lines. Creation and maintenance of fire lines. What are fire lines? Fire lines are those, let's say, areas, those wide strips of land in the forest where we will not maintain any kind of vegetation. Where we will not maintain any kind of vegetation. Why? Because if vegetation is not there in that area, where will be raw material for the forest fire? There will be no material, there will be no raw material for forest fire. And that's why from that point, it would be difficult for forest fire to spread further. Right? So what are fire lines? Wide strips cleared of vegetation to prevent spread. If we want to prevent the spread of forest fire, we'll have to clear some areas of vegetation. As vegetation is not there, the raw material required for forest fire will not be there, and thus we will be able to ensure that the spread of forest fire is not occurring beyond that point. Okay, are you able to understand this? Next, community participation. Now, community plays extremely important role as far as forest fires are concerned. Why? Because first of all, the practices that community does may be considered as the cause of forest fire. And secondly, they can be, they can be one of the stakeholders as far as early warning is concerned. Because they are going in forest for, let's say, various activities like collecting their livelihood, grazing of their cattle and all. Right? So they might be aware that, okay, this area is let's say, has seen occurrence of fire. So they can alert the authorities, and authorities can immediately take the action so that that forest fire does not spread to other areas. Right? So joint community participation, joint forest management committees incentivize villagers to monitor and report forest fires. Right? So villagers are incentivized to monitor and monitor and report forest fire. उसके लिए उन्हें incentivize किया जाता है that they should do this kind of monitoring, and once they see any kind of instance, please report to the authorities. Okay. Then awareness campaigns amongst tribal communities. Tribal communities, we have seen that often their practices are leading to forest fires. So we'll have to make them aware that, okay, avoid shifting cultivation, avoid setting forest on fire just for increasing the forest produce. Right? So for that, we will have to make them aware. Then next is promote detection of forest fire using remote sensing satellites, drones, ground patrolling, etc. Right? So that is what is being not promote, prompt detection. Prompt detection is carried out by Forest Survey of India, and they take help of these things. They take help of satellites. I told you the satellites that are from USA. So satellites from USA are used for this particular purpose. Then they also use drones, ground patrolling and all for prompt detection. Then specialized teams with fire beaters, blowers and water sprayers are also there. Now, once you have detected it, you have to take the action at the earliest. And for that, specialized teams have been prepared with the equipments that are required for, let's say, taking care of forest fires. Next, National Action Plan on Forest Fire. This is one of the important steps that has been taken, wherein we want to take care of forest fire with the participation of community. So this was started by MOEF and CC in 2018 to minimize forest fire. So what it does, the plan comprises taking action by informing, enabling, empowering forest fringe communities and incentivizing them to work in tandem with forest departments. Okay, what we will be doing under this action plan, we will be empowering local communities, and we will make sure that they work in association with forest department as far as forest fire mitigation steps are concerned. Okay, so that is what is the action plan. Important step. If forest fire question is there, this action plan should be there in your answer as a major taken. Next is forest fire prevention management scheme. This should also be there in your answer, right? Forest fire prevention and management scheme. Now here what we are doing, so it is a centrally sponsored scheme. It is a centrally sponsored scheme wherein we are working in association with states that aims at overall protection of forest from fire. It is a centrally sponsored scheme for forest fire. Now, what is done under this particular scheme? It involves establishment and maintenance of fire line. We have already talked about fire line. So they will be maintained, they will be established under this particular scheme. First. Second, construction of water storage structures. Water is required to, let's say, douse forest fires. So uske liye storage structure will be constructed under the scheme. Second. Third, purchase of modern firefighting equipments for fighting fire, for fighting forest fire. Right? Whatever modern equipments are there, we will be purchasing those equipments under this particular scheme. And fourthly, awareness campaigns on forest fire control. Awareness campaigns on forest fire control. So these steps are taken under Forest Fire Prevention and Management Scheme initiated in 2017 by the central government, that is Ministry of Forest, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change. And lastly, we have seen that climate change is one of the factors, one of the cause of forest fire, and that's why climate change mitigation is also being carried out to take care of forest fire. So these are the steps that we have taken for forest fire. I hope it is clear to you. Does the steps like burning of parali can lead to forest fire? That is what we have referred to. That is what we have referred to, Pratibha, when we talked about burning farm residue. Burning farm residue, we have referred to that point only. Okay, burning farm residue is that only, parali only, stubble burning only. Some fire also happened due to wire sparking in wheat crop. How can this mitigated? So we'll have to make sure that the power transmission lines are not there in that particular area, right? Agar hogi to there is no alternative. You'll just have to monitor. But again, it is not a forest fire, right? It is not a forest fire. Fine. So if, let's say, wheat cropping is there, and if some kind of sparking occurs, and due to that sparking, let's say some fire is occurring, then people will know in a short span of time, people will know that, okay, यहाँ पे कुछ ना कुछ गड़बड़ हुई है. So they will try to take care of that particular fire immediately, right? So it does not fall in the category of forest fire, right? It does not fall in the category of forest fire. फायर लाइंस मैंने बताया था, फिर से बताता हूँ. फॉरेस्ट लाइंस क्या होती है? फॉरेस्ट लाइंस क्या होती है फिर से बताता हूँ. Let us consider that this is forest. Let us consider that this is forest. Okay. Now you know that this is the core of forest. आपको as a, let's say, forest department official, you know that this forest is core forest. Core forest मतलब यहाँ पे जो भी इस forest में let's say कोई species होगी, कोई organisms होंगे, animals होंगे, उनका habitat इस location में. ठीक है. तो what you may do to protect this core forest from forest fire, what you will do, you will remove the trees from a particular area. आप क्या करोगे? एक ऐसे एरिया से, ये जो ब्लू कलर की लाइन है, इस एरिया से आप सारे के सारे ट्रीज वेजिटेशन हटा दोगे. क्यों? क्योंकि अगर कल जाके यहाँ पे फॉरेस्ट फायर आ गया, तो इट शुड नॉट स्प्रेड टू द कोर एरिया. And that's why you are maintaining these forest lines. So blue color is, let's say, imagine that it is a forest line. What will happen? So fire will reach up to this area. It will reach up to this area and it will stop. Why? Because from this area, in this blue area, it is not getting fuel. अगर फॉरेस्ट फायर को फ्यूल, उसका रॉ मटेरियल ही नहीं मिला, तो वो स्प्रेड होगा क्या आगे? आगे स्प्रेड ही नहीं होगा, एंड दस विल बी एबल टू प्रोटेक्ट कोर फॉरेस्ट इन दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया. ठीक है, तो ऐसे लाइंस को हम कहते हैं फॉरेस्ट लाइन. इन फॉरेस्ट लाइन में कोई भी वेजिटेशन नहीं होगा, जिसके कारण फॉरेस्ट फायर आगे बढ़ नहीं पाएगा. अंडरग्राउंडिंग पावर ट्रांसमिशन लाइंस लाइक तमिलनाडु, वो बहुत कॉस्टली है, इट्स वेरी कॉस्टली. ठीक है, सो इट्स नॉट एडवाइजेबल, इट्स नॉट पॉसिबल एवरीवेयर. But forest fire is very localized event. See, it starts as a localized event, Priya. It starts as a localized event. Fine, and based upon let's say patrolling, there are forest rangers. They carry out the patrolling in the forest. So they may find out that particular instance first. Secondly, we have satellites. Satellites can detect these forest fire instances. Why? Because forest fire is what? It is infrared. Forest fire is what? It is heat. And heat is what? Infrared radiations. Those infrared radiations can be caught by some satellites. Thirdly, we can use drones. Right? So drones can be used. So once you understand that, okay, यहाँ पे forest fire हो चुका है, तो आप prevent कर पाओगे. You can use, for example, हमारे यहाँ पे भी आजकल helicopters है जो उस एरिया में पानी छोड़ के they will make sure that the forest fire is taken care of it. Right? So हो सकता है. या फॉरेस्ट रेंजर्स के पास भी आजकल ऐसे डिवाइसेस है, ब्लोवर्स है, जो उन फॉरेस्ट फायर को कम कर पाए, उन फॉरेस्ट फायर को रोक पाए. ठीक है, yes, it is localized, but if it spreads, it starts as a localized event, and if it spreads, it would lead to chaos. We have seen what has happened in California. We have seen what has happened in Greece. Right? those दो इवेंट 2025 में बहुत बुरे हुए थे, ग्रीस एंड कैलिफोर्निया. Extreme forest fire instances were there in those two areas. Okay, I hope it is clear. Now let us move to the next disaster, and that is stampede. Right? In 10-15 minutes we'll complete stampede, and then we'll move to the institutions. So this is the picture of Bengaluru. You can see so many people in a very small area. Okay, so this is the picture of Bengaluru. Now, definition. What is the definition of stampede? Stampede is a type of crowd disaster. It is a crowd disaster where the surge of individuals occur in a crowd. Surge of individuals, right? Surge means they will move in a haphazard manner. Surge of individual occur in a crowd in response to perceived danger or loss of physical space. Right? Why there will be surge? Because they have perceived some danger. Right? They have perceived some danger, and that's why they are moving very fast. There would be surge of individuals, or they have sensed that there is lack of space, which may be hampering their, let's say, the activity of breathing, which may be harming them physically. And that's why there would be surge, and that surge eventually leads to a disaster, and that disaster we call as stampede. Right? Often this kind of disaster occur in an area where excessive number of people are there than the accommodative capacity of that particular area. Right? So, for example, there is a concept like concept of people per square feet. So एक एरिया कितने लोग अकोमोडेट कर सकता है, दैट इज व्हाट इज पीपल पर स्क्वायर फीट. सो अगर वो पीपल पर स्क्वायर फीट की कैपेसिटी उससे अकोमोडेटिव कैपेसिटी से बढ़ गई, इट मे लीड टू स्टैम्पिड. स्टैम्पिड उस केस में ऑकर होने के चांसेस ज्यादा है. And in 2025, unfortunately, we have seen number of such stampedes. Right? For example, TVK rally in Tamil Nadu. Right? So TVK is the party of Vijay. So in that rally, they have seen it led to, let's say, stampede. Recent example, I think October only, September or October. Then RCB victory parade, right? So that also happened. Kumbh Mela in Prayagraj. All these are the recent examples of stampede that we have seen in India. Okay, and such instances have occurred in other places as well. Okay. Next, why stampede occur? Why stampede occur? So first and the most important cause is overcrowding. Overcrowding is the root cause of occurrence of stampede. But along with overcrowding, there would be some mismanagement at that particular event where that overcrowding has happened. For example, inadequate planning for crowd control measures. मतलब क्या 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 हो सकता है इसमें inadequate planning में? Lack of enough entry and exit gates. Often you must have heard that जब stampede हो जाता है तो लोग बोलते हैं कि आने जाने का एक ही रास्ता था. Right? So entry and exit gates, if the inadequacy is there of entry and exit gates, then there is a chance of occurrence of these kind of events if overcrowding happens. Secondly, poor lighting. Poor lighting. लोगों को पता ही नहीं कि कहाँ जाना है. Right? So poor lighting is another, let's say, inadequate planning measure. Then lack or less use of signage. लोगों को डायरेक्ट करना होगा आपको कि आप अगर यहाँ से आगे जाओगे तो आप एग्जिट कर सकते हो, या अगर उन लोगों को कोई साइनेज पता ही नहीं कि एग्जिट कहाँ पे है, दे विल ट्राई टू मेक श्योर दैट दे आर गोइंग बैक टू द एंट्री गेट. सो सारे अगर एंट्री गेट की तरफ से बाहर निकलने की कोशिश करेंगे तो चांसेस है स्टैम्पीड होने के. राइट. देन फायर सेफ्टी. Fire safety has not been maintained, and in some area, let's say some small instance of fire occurred, then there would be a panic, there would be some kind of, let's say, rumors also, and then there would be let's say movement of people towards the exit gates, leading to occurrence of stampede. Right. Then behavioral factors are also there. Sudden rush due to fear and rumors. They say that in Prayagraj this has happened. राइट. उसके बाद अगर आपने कोई वीडियोस वगैरह देखे होंगे स्टैम्पीड के बाद, तो ऐसा बोल रहे थे कि कुछ लोग आए थे, उन्होंने कहा कि गेट बंद होने वाला है, गेट बंद होने वाला है, लाइक दैट. सो दैट काइंड ऑफ रूमर्स, फियर्स may trigger behavioral change, and that may be a cause of stampede. Next, NDMA guidelines are there. NDMA guidelines are there. We hardly do much about stampede. That's why we'll have to depend more upon NDMA guidelines. So NDMA guidelines on crowd management of 2014. What they are saying, pre-event planning you should carry out. You should carry out pre-event planning. You means it may be, let's say, organizers, it may be the district authorities if that event is, let's say, associated with the government. So identify vulnerable spots in that particular venue. Then bottlenecks, अगर उस एरिया में एग्जिट के तरफ कुछ ऑब्स्टेकल्स है, आइडेंटिफाई दोज बॉटलनेक्स, ट्राई टू टेक मेजर फॉर दोज बॉटलनेक्स. देन स्ट्रक्चरल वीकनेस ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर एरिया. अगर किसी ऑडिटोरियम में या किसी स्टेडियम में कुछ इवेंट होने वाला है तो क्या स्ट्रक्चरल वीकनेस है, क्योंकि अगर वहाँ पे मान लेते ओवर क्राउडिंग हो गए और कोई स्ट्रक्चर गिर गया, देन दैट मे ट्रिगर फियर अमंग्स पीपल लीडिंग टू स्टैम्पीड. ठीक है. सो दैट मे बी डन. देन सफिशिएंट एंट्री एग्जिट गेट्स शुड बी देयर. राइट. This is prerequisite. Mandatory approvals from district authorities, fire departments, police, PWD, health department, etc. Right? Mandatory approvals should be there for major events. If those approvals are there, then the authorities will be carrying out inspection of the structure, inspection of the venue, and then they will approve or disapprove the, let's say, event. Then structural safety should be taken into account. Structural safety of that area, wherein temporary structures, barricades, pandals, stages must undergo engineering safety checks. Right? जो structure वहाँ पे बनाया है, that should undergo the engineering safety checks. Whether it is okay, can it be improved? Like those kind of checks it should undergo. Then fire safety measures should be put in place. Prerequisite, again a prerequisite, because if fire safety measures are there, then we will be able to take care of fire that may occur in that particular area. Then क्लियर मार्किंग ऑफ इमरजेंसी एग्जिट, साइनेज, आपको साइंस यूज करने पड़ेंगे, राइट? लोग वो देख के दे विल बी एबल टू मूव इन दैट पर्टिकुलर वेन्यू अप्रोप्रिएटली, राइट? सो क्लियर मार्किंग ऑफ emergency exit should be there. Then crowd density norms should be established. How many people should be allowed? So specify permissible crowd per square meter, per crowd per square feet, whatever it is. So evacuation and evacuation triggers. Crowd density norms, that means how many people should be there in that venue, that you should decide. Secondly, there should be some evacuation triggers, that is when to evacuate people, right? The authorities, the event manager should not only take into account how many people should be allowed, but also they should take into account when we have to evacuate people. अगर फॉर एग्जाम्पल एक इवैक्यूएशन का ट्रिगर हो सकता है, कोई बैरिकेड गिर गया, अगर कोई बैरिकेड गिर गया है, दैट मे बी कंसिडर्ड एज ए ट्रिगर फॉर द इवैक्यूएशन ऑफ पीपल. अगर बैरिकेड गिरता है तो इवेंट मैनेजर्स को, अथॉरिटीज को ये समझना चाहिए कि वहां पे लोग ज्यादा हो गए, लेट्स इवैक्यूएट देम. दैट कैन बी ए ट्रिगर फॉर यू टू टेक केयर of the crowd and thus to avoid stampede. Then coordination, obviously coordination should be there amongst police, fire departments, health, etc., right? Police, fire services, health, municipal bodies, organizers, etc. Then public address systems should be there, right? Constant announcement should be there. अगर कोई fear, rumor वहां पे spread हो जाता है, it may go out of your control, and that's why you as authorities, you as event organizers should keep on announcing some, let's say, messages to people. Then help desk should be maintained. Then security measures like CCTV, drones, wireless communication should also be in place, and emergency preparedness. अगर कुछ हो जाता है तो वहाँ पे फर्स्ट एड आपके पास होनी चाहिए, एम्बुलेंसेस होने चाहिए, रैपिड रिस्पॉन्स टीम्स होने चाहिए in that particular event. But often these things are not there. For example, especially in case of Bengaluru, especially in case of, let's say, the RCB event, these things were not there, and that led to loss of life of many people whose average age was below 40. Okay, so that's what is stampede. Fine. Now we will be moving towards our discussion of the Disaster Management Act of 2005. ठीक है? Why frequent stampede have occurred in recent years? एक तो बहुत लोग हो गए हम लोग, right? बहुत ज्यादा हो गए हम लोग. We are 1.46 crore. 1.46 crore. Can you imagine that? Right? So that is one of the reasons. Population बहुत बढ़ गई है, and everyone, due to social media and all, everyone want to be there, right? There is FOMO that compel people to be there in that event, right? Just उनको मे भी वहां पे जाने की इच्छा ना हो, पर सोशल मीडिया ने उन्हें कंपेल कर दिया कि वहां पे जाओ. And then mismanagement. Sir, it means that habitat of species is core forest, and outside core of forest they're just colony or market. No, see core forest में वो nesting और breeding करेंगे, अर्शद. It's not that बाकी का forest useless है, वहाँ पे हम malls बना दे. No. In core forest, often the activities like reproduction are very, let's say, even for animals also, those are private activities. So those activities would be performed in the core forest, where they feel that, okay, there is no disturbance. Fine. So core forest में nesting और breeding की activities होती है. ठीक है? Who is accountable? Unfortunately, in these kind of events, no one is accountable. But generally, we try to, let's say, put accountability on the event manager. पर अगर event manager government होगा तो no one is accountable. ठीक है? Does there is also any criteria that how kilometer area it should cover to call? No criteria as such. No criteria. Okay. What is stampede actually is same as overcrowding? No. See, only overcrowding. If overcrowding is there, and if there is no, let's say, unfortunate event that is occurring, it is not stampede. But because of, let's say, overcrowding, if there is some kind of, let's say, sudden movement of people, sudden surge of people, which is leading to loss of life, which is leading to some injury to people, then it would be called as stampede. Then it would be called as stampede. Okay. Point 2 and 3 are not same. कौन से point 2 and 3 अरशद? ठीक है, I hope it is clear. Now, let us move to the Disaster Management Act 2005. Under this act, some important bodies have been established. We will be referring to those bodies, and also we'll be talking about the recent amendments to the Disaster Management Act in 2025 this year. हाँ मैं बोला, पहले ही बोल दिया मैंने कि मैं प्रोवाइड करूँगा, बट लेट गिव मी 1 or 2 days. Why stampede occur में second and third? Why stampede occur में second and third? This is second and this is third. आप ये बोल रहे हो या इन दोनों में second and third? Inadequate planning for crowd control measures and behavioral factors. See, behavioral factors would trigger वो movement जो trigger होगा लोगों का. ओवरक्राउडिंग हो गई है, राइट? ओवरक्राउडिंग हो गई है और मूवमेंट हो गया. वो मूवमेंट होने के लिए जो ट्रिगर है वो है बिहेवियरल चेंज. पुअर लाइटिंग एंड लैक ऑफ यूज ऑफ साइनेज. पुअर लाइटिंग एंड लैक ऑफ यूज ऑफ साइनेज. आर यू टॉकिंग अबाउट दिस? पुअर लाइटिंग मीन्स वहां पे लोगों को पता नहीं चल रहा कि वेयर दे आर मूविंग, वेयर दे आर सपोज टू गो इन ऑर्डर टू लेट्स से गो टू एग्जिट, राइट? एंड लेट्स से लैक ऑफ यूज ऑफ साइनेज मतलब गाइडेंस नहीं है वहां पे. ठीक है, तो डोंट गो इनटू दीज काइंड ऑफ थिंग्स, नॉट वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. ठीक है. नाउ, Disaster Management Act 2005. First, the DM Act was enacted in India to provide a comprehensive framework for disaster management across the country. See, this act we have enacted in 2005. So before 2005, if you take, let's say, 10 to 12 years before 2005, we have seen major disasters. We have seen major disasters from 1993 to 2004. 1993, we have seen major earthquake in Maharashtra. Then in 1999, we have seen major cyclone in Odisha, super cyclone, leading to loss of, both these events led to loss of more than 10,000 people. Then Bhuj earthquake we have seen, I think in 2001. Bhuj earthquake of 2001, and that was followed by tsunami of 2004. Now, as we have seen those kind of events in very frequent, in a very short span of time, it was compelled that there is a need of some standardized approach. There is a need of some specialized approach for disaster management in India. Earlier, disaster was not handled by one particular authority. There were different authorities that were handling different disasters, right? For example, drought was the subject matter of agriculture ministry. Other disasters were subject matter of some, let's say, Ministry of Home Affairs, Ministry of Health Affairs, Ministry of Health, like that. So there was no dedicated mechanism for handling of disasters in India before 2005. And in that particular decade, preceding 2005, we have seen number of disasters that compelled us to come up with this particular act, wherein focus is on comprehensive framework for disaster management across country. Right? It aims to establish institutional mechanisms for disaster management at national, state, and district levels. Right? The disaster management should be carried out at all the levels, but obviously at these three levels, the functioning should be different. For example, at national level, we should carry out planning. At district level, we should carry out implementation, and at state level, there should be monitoring, right? So every level should be involved with different kind of responsibilities, and that is what is done under Disaster Management Act. So the first authority that is established under Disaster Management Act is NDMA. NDMA, so all these authorities that we will be referring to, all of these are under Disaster Management Act, and that's why all of them are statutory. All of them are statutory. So NDMA is chaired by the Prime Minister of India. It is chaired by the Prime Minister of India, and it has the responsibility for laying down policies, plans, and guidelines for disaster management. Right? We have discussed NDMA guidelines. So obviously that providing those guidelines is the function of NDMA. Okay? So that is the major function, to come up with policies, plans, and guidelines for the disasters. So what are the functions? To be more precise, what are the functions? Approve National Disaster Plan. Approve National Disaster Plan. So NDMA will approve the plan prepared by National Executive Committee. Now, please be here. Please be here. I'm telling you one important point, which is important in the context of the amendments. Now, the function that we are discussing is that NDMA would approve national disaster plan prepared by NEC, National Executive Committee, that we'll be referring to on next page. Okay? NEC is the committee that would prepare the plan, and the approval would be by NDMA. Okay? So this is as per the 2005 Act. In 2025 amendments, this has changed, wherein NDMA on its own can come up with plan. NDMA 2005 के एक्ट के अंदर प्लान अप्रूव करता था. प्लान कौन प्रिपेयर करेगा? NEC, नेशनल एग्जीक्यूटिव कमेटी. उसने प्रिपेयर किया हुआ प्लान अप्रूव किया जाएगा NDMA द्वारा. पर 2025 में जो अमेंडमेंट्स हुए हैं, वेयर इन दे हैव अलाउड, इन दोज अमेंडमेंट्स दे हैव अलाउड NDMA टू प्रिपेयर द प्लान बाय इटसेल्फ. ठीक है? सो दिस इज द पॉइंट दैट वुड चेंज इन द अमेंडमेंट्स पॉइंट. सो यहाँ पे लिखा है मैंने पॉइंट, तो मैं यहाँ पे स्टार मार्क दे रहा हूँ, सो दैट यू शुड बी एबल टू अंडरस्टैंड. ठीक है? थोड़ा सा अलग कुछ मार्क देता हूँ, ऐसा स्टार मार्क दे रहा हूँ. राइट? सो दिस इज द पॉइंट दैट यू शुड नोट दिस पॉइंट. टेक अ नोट ऑफ दिस पॉइंट. ठीक है? Next now, approve plans prepared by ministries, departments of the central government in accordance with the national plan. Now, there would be one national plan, and every ministry, every department would be coming up with its own departmental plan, ministerial plan that would be approved by NDMA. Okay? That is second. Next, laying down guidelines to be followed by state authorities in drawing up state plan. State authorities would be coming up with their own plan, but that plan should be in sync with the national plan, and that's why NDMA gives guidelines to state disaster management authorities that whenever you prepare your own plan, try to follow these guidelines. Next, recommend provision of fund for the purpose of mitigation. Right? Provide funds for the purpose of mitigation of disaster. So provision of funds for the mitigation of disaster would be done by NDMA. ठीक है? Then provide such support to other countries. Right? Often, for example, right now in Sri Lanka, because of the Twa, there is some devastation. So that country is provided with some support. So that support would be provided based upon the recommendations of NDMA only. Right? So affected by major countries as determined by the central government. So those supports, whatever support we provide to other countries, that would be provided by NDMA on the recommendations of the central government. Okay? So that's what is the function of NDMA. Then the second body under Disaster Management Act is NEC, National Executive Committee. Who is the head of NDMA? Head is Prime Minister. Now, if Prime Minister is the head, is it the case that Prime Minister only has work related to disaster management? No. Obviously, all the different let's say departments are looked after, all the different policy matters would be looked after by the Prime Minister. Obviously, that's why NDMA on its own won't be able to prepare plan, and that's why there was a committee. There was a committee which was supposed to prepare a plan, and that committee is National Executive Committee. Who heads NEC? Union Home Secretary. So Union Home Secretary would be the head of this NEC. It prepares national plans and coordinates implementation of those plans. Preparation of national plan was the function of NEC. Okay? Next, it includes secretaries of key ministries like health, power, agriculture, etc. Because if the plan is to be prepared for the entire nation, obviously opinion of different experts from different ministries are to be accommodated, and that's why secretaries of those ministries were also members of NEC. Okay, so that is second institute. Third institute is SDMA, State Disaster Management Authority. SDMA. Who is the head? The respective chief minister of that state would be the head. Then SDMA lays down policies and plans for disaster management in the state. So whatever policies, plans are to be followed for disaster management in that particular state, those plans and policies would be prepared by SDMA. Right? Obviously, guidelines would be coming from NDMA. When plans and policies are prepared, guidelines would be coming from NDMA. Fine. So that is what is SDMA. Is there State Executive Committee? Yes, there is State Executive Committee as well. So State Executive Committee headed by Chief Secretary of that particular state. Of that particular state, Chief Secretary would be the head of State Executive Committee. Again, similar functions are there. SEC has the responsibility for coordinating and monitoring the implementation of national policy, national plan, state plan as provided under the DM Act. Right? इसकी क्या रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है? कोऑर्डिनेट करेगा एंड मॉनिटरिंग करेगा इम्प्लीमेंटेशन किस किस का? नेशनल प्लान का, नेशनल प्लान, national policy. If there is national policy, then that national policy and the state plan as well. Right? ये सारे implement हो रहे या नहीं हो रहे, इसके लिए coordination का काम होगा state executive committee का. Then next is DDMA, District Disaster Management Authority. DDMA. At the district level, we also have the authorities which are headed by the district collector or district magistrate. DM head करेगा. There would be co-chairperson, and that co-chairperson would be elected representative of local authority. Elected representative of local authority would be co-chairperson. Who would be that local authority? Which will be that local authority? It can be a municipal corporation. It can be a ZP as well. Zilla Parishad as well. Okay. Then its role is to plan, coordinate and implement disaster management measures as per the guidelines. उस डिस्ट्रिक्ट में जो भी प्लानिंग करनी है, कोऑर्डिनेशन करना है, as far as implementation of disaster management guidelines are concerned, that would be done by DDMA, District Disaster Management Authority. In the amendments of 2025, Urban District Management Authority can also be established. So that point we'll talk about under the amendments. Next is National Disaster Response Force, NDRF. NDRF, often you must have seen pictures of NDRF Jawans, NDRF soldiers that are working, that are rescuing people that are affected by some disaster. So that force is also established under the DM Act, Disaster Management Act. A specialized force in India tasked with responsibility of responding to natural and man-made disasters. So it is a specialized force. They are experts in handling of disasters. They would be equipped with some kind of important tools required for the handling. Initially established in 2006, 2006 में establish हुआ था. Initially जब establish हुआ था, there were only 8 battalions. Today 16 battalions are there. 16 battalions are there, drawn from these battalions, or the soldiers of these battalions are drawn from paramilitary forces like CAPF, BSF, CISF, CRPF, ITBP, SSB, Assam Rifles. इन सारे forces से, these are paramilitary forces, इनसे हम कुछ let's say soldiers लेंगे and they will be trained for the handling of disaster. Next, each battalion is composed of 18 self-sufficient specialized search and rescue teams, right? Battalions. 16 battalions are there. Each battalion consists of 18 self-sufficient teams. Okay. Every battalion consists of 18 teams. Then these teams each consist of 47 members. So 18 teams each has 47 members. 47 members each. Fine. So such 18 teams would be there, and that would form one battalion. 16 battalions है, which will have 18 teams each. हर एक battalion में 18 teams होंगी. उन teams में 47 members होंगे. So every battalion, that's why consists of 1049 personnel in the battalion would be there. ठीक है, 1149 members होंगे हर एक battalion में, and these teams that are there, they have the experts. ये जो 47 members है हर एक team के, उनमें experts भी होंगे. For example, structural engineers would be there, then technicians would be there, electricians should be there, canine units would be there, that means dog squad and all. Then medical and paramedic personnel would also be there in the NDRF. So staff would be coming from different, let's say, different expertise, so that we will be able to give a proper response to the handling of disasters. And lastly, it operates under Ministry of Home Affairs. It is under NDRF is under Ministry of Home Affairs. Okay, I hope you are able to understand this. Next authority is State Disaster Response Force. SDRF is also there, and they differ, and that's why we are not discussing about them, right? They differ as per the let's say state. Fine. Every state will have different battalions, they will have different teams, they'll have different number of members. But state can also have their own disaster response force, that is called as SDRF. Then the next is National Institute for Disaster Management, NIDM. NIDM is there in Delhi. And what is the work of NIDM? Under the Disaster Management Act 2005, NIDM has been assigned nodal responsibilities for human resource development, capacity building, training, research, documentation. Right? Whatever is required to, let's say, increase the expertise of disaster handling in India, all that would be done by NIDM. Be it research, be it documentation, training, capacity building, and human resource development. All these tasks would be done by NIDM, which is an institute located in New Delhi, right? So it is also under Disaster Management Act of 2005. Okay, I hope it is clear. Then next and important is National Disaster Response Fund. This fund is also established under DM Act. Now, NDRF, that is National Disaster Response Fund. ठीक है, फंड के बारे में बात कर रहे हैं हम लोग यहाँ पे. Is established to provide timely financial assistance for immediate relief and rehabilitation during disasters. Right? So immediate relief के लिए भी यूज होगा और rehabilitation के लिए भी यूज होगा ये फंड NDRF. Next, it is funded by the central government. It is funded by the central government. Central government applies some cess. They apply some customs duty, etc. And from that, we will be able to create a fund which will be assigned to NDRF, National Disaster Response Fund. So funded by the central government, and its utilization is governed by guidelines issued by NDMA. ठीक है, it would be funded by the central government, और वो कैसे यूज करना है, किसको कितना फंड असाइन करना है, that would be done through NDMA. Next, it is placed under public accounts of Government of India, right? You must be aware of 3 different funds. उसमें से जो public accounts fund है, उसके अंदर होगा NDRF. Then It is financed through levy of cess on certain items, chargeable excise and customs duty. Through cess, customs duty, excise duty, we will be funding this particular National Disaster Response Fund. Then it is audited by CAG, right? Audit of NDRF fund would be done by CAG, the CAG. Next is State Disaster Response Fund. SDRF is also there, but as per 2005 Act, it is not mandatory, right? It is not. Sorry, this point is not correct for SDRF. It is for force. Okay. So State Disaster Response Fund is also established under 2005 Act by different states. So it is a primary fund available with state governments for response to notified disasters. Right? In order to provide immediate relief, there is a need of fund with the state governments as well, and that fund is SDRF. And from this fund, the state government would be able to provide immediate relief for the notified disasters. I hope you understand what are notified disasters. Yesterday we referred to this when we discussed about heat waves. Heat waves, is it a notified disaster? Please tell me in comment. Is it a notified disaster, heat wave? Next point. Central government contributes 75% of SDRF allocation for general category states. For general category states means which are not northeastern states, Himalayan states. बाकी के states में 75% fund of SDRF will be by central government. ठीक है? And for special states like northeastern states, Himalayan state, 90% would be coming from the center. General category states 75%, special category states 90%. The annual contribution is released in 2 equal installments as per the recommendations of Finance Commission. Finance Commission would recommend that this much fund you should assign to the SDRF, and based on that, the 2 installments fund will be released in 2 installments. Next, SDRF shall be used only for meeting expenditure for providing immediate relief to the victims. Can it be used for rehabilitation? No. Only for immediate relief. Only for immediate relief, SDRF should be used. Okay? So that is an important point with respect to SDRF. Next, amendments to the Disaster Management Act. Amendments to Disaster Management Act 2005. इस एक्ट को हमने अमेंड किया, पर I have not written when it has been done. It has been done in 2025, this year. This year only we have amended the 2005 Act. So what are the changes? First, it empowers National Disaster Management Authority and State Disaster Management Authorities to prepare the disaster plan at national and state level instead of NEC and SEC. Right? I told you that NEC and SEC are the authorities, are the let's say institutions that come up with plan, and that plan would be approved by NDMA and SDMA. But now under 2025 amendments, NDMA and SDMA can prepare national plans on their own. First amendment. Second, it make provision for constitution of Urban Disaster Management Authority. Right now, not only DDMA, even Urban Disaster Management Authority can be there for state capitals, and large cities having municipal corporations. Those cities that have municipal corporation and the state capitals can have Urban Disaster Management Authority. That is an important amendment. Next, now this is the point. It make it mandatory for every state to raise and maintain SDRF force. Force is mandatory to be maintained now under the 2025 amendments. 2005 के जो amendments थे उनमें state disaster response force mentioned था, पर वो mandatory नहीं था. Now it is mandatory under 2005. So SDRF means force. Here F should not be confused with fund. It is force. Next, it strengthens the efficient working of NDMA and SDMA. NDMA and SDMA की जो working है उसको strengthen करने के लिए कुछ steps लिए जाएंगे under the Act. And lastly, it provides statutory status to pre-act organizations like the National Crisis Management Committee. Now, before the 2005 Act, there were some committees that were, let's say, recommending some steps for the crisis management. For example, National Crisis Management Committee. So these kind of committees have been given statutory status under the Act. Right, so National Crisis Management Committee and High Level Committee. I referred to High Level Committee. We referred to High Level Committee when we discussed about the different categories of disasters maybe in second class. Maybe in second class we talked about different categories of disasters. That High Level Committee, the National Crisis Management Committee, now have been given statutory recognition under the Disaster Management Act, amended in year 2025. Okay, so that is what is the amendments. So now, the disaster management framework at global level. At global level, right now, we have one framework, and that is called as Sendai framework. Sendai framework for disaster risk reduction 2015 to 2030. इसके पहले क्या था? इसके पहले HYGO framework था, HYOGO. HYGO framework was there before Sendai framework. Right now, Sendai framework is important. So, Sendai framework was the result of third UN conference on disaster risk reduction held in Sendai. Sendai kahan hai? Japan. In Japan, there is this city called Sendai. Wahan pe ye framework accept hua tha. It has 4 priority areas. 4 priority areas are there, and based on these priority areas, it want to make sure that we are reducing the risk associated with disaster. Which are those 4 priority areas? First, understanding disaster risk. You should understand whether your area is vulnerable to a particular kind of disaster. So it is as good as understanding disaster risk is as good as mapping. It is as good as mapping. First. Second, strengthening disaster risk governance to manage disaster risk. Strengthening disaster risk governance. That means you should prepare the plans beforehand. So it is a kind of preparation, strengthening disaster risk governance to manage disaster risk. It is a kind of preparation. It is a kind of mitigation steps that should be taken for, let's say, reducing the disasters. Then investing in disaster risk reduction for resilience. You have to invest in reducing the disaster risk by improving the resilience of, let's say, infrastructure. राइट अगर आप मान लेते हैं कोई रेट्रोफिटिंग कर रहे हो किसी एरिया में, यू आर कैरिंग आउट रेट्रोफिटिंग ऑफ ए पब्लिक इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर, देन इट इज ए काइंड ऑफ इन्वेस्टमेंट टू रिड्यूस द रिस्क ऑफ दैट पर्टिकुलर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर टू, फॉर एग्जाम्पल, डिजास्टर्स लाइक अर्थक्वेक. So that is what they are saying as third point, investing in disaster risk reduction of the state by improving resilience. Next, fourth, enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response and to build back better in recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction. So what they are saying, enhancing disaster preparedness for effective response. You have to prepare for the occurrence of disaster. You cannot firefight. You have to prepare for the occurrence of disaster. For example, in number of disasters, we talked about capacity building of the local administration. So what is that? That is preparation only, right? Even early warning is what? Preparation only, right? Use of some rapid response forces, use of, let's say, coming up with SOPs. All these are preparations for the occurrence of a disaster. Fine. Then it is saying that, and to build back better in recovery, rehabilitation and reconstruction. This is the most important point. And in case question is asked, try to use this term. Build back better. What it says? It says that after the occurrence of disaster, when you are recovering, when you are, let's say, rehabilitating, reconstructing in that particular area, you should make sure that construction that you are carrying out is disaster resilient infrastructure. अगर आप फिर से उस जगह पे जब कंस्ट्रक्शन करोगे और फिर से उस जगह पे अगर आप जो डिजास्टर रेजिलिएंट डिज़ाइन है, मटेरियल है, उनका यूज़ अवॉइड करोगे तो फिर से उस जगह पे डिजास्टर हो सकती है. तो जब भी आप रिकवरी फेज में जाओ तो आप एंश्योर करो कि वो रिकवरी बेटर रिकवरी है, एंड दैट इज व्हाट इज बिल्ड बैक बेटर. ट्राई टू यूज दिस टर्म इन योर आंसर राइटिंग. ठीक है. Next, apart from these four let's say four priority areas, there are 7 targets as well. What these 7 targets are saying, there is a need to reduce something. What we should reduce? Substantially reduce global disaster mortality. Mortality को कम करना है. Second, a number of affected people. Right? Mortality को कम करना है, number of affected people को कम करना है. From any disaster, whatever people are getting affected, that number should reduce. कब तक, कब से कब तक? 2015 से 2030 तक. Third, economic loss in relation to GDP we should reduce. Third. Fourth, damage to critical infrastructure and service disruption. All these losses to life, to number of people affected, to GDP, to infrastructure, we have to reduce. And 3 things we have to increase. We have to substantially increase. First, number of countries with national and local disaster risk reduction strategies by 2020. By 2020, we have to increase the number of countries that have disaster risk reduction strategies. First. Second, increase international cooperation to developing countries. Developing countries को hand holding चाहिए होगी, तो इसके लिए international cooperation को increase कीजिए. Thirdly, increase availability and access to early warning system and disaster risk reduction information. Right? ये 3 चीजों पे हमें काम करना है, so that we are able to increase. What we need to increase? First, countries with the plans for disaster risk reduction. Second, international cooperation. Third, countries with early warning system. Fine. So ये सारी चीजें increase करनी है, ये सारी चीजें decrease करनी है. And that is what are the 7 targets under Sendai framework. Fine. So that is about our discussion for disaster management. एक just जो आपने कहा था, in the course of our classes this has happened, right? In the course of our classes, maybe 5-6 years back, the updation of earthquake map has happened. So the earthquake design code of 2025 by the Bureau of Indian Standards. Bureau of Indian Standards, who comes up with the vulnerability map of India as far as earthquake is concerned, they have came up with the new map, right? So उसमें उन्होंने क्या किया है? Almost the country's entire Himalayan arc has now been placed in the newly created zone 6. जो हिमालयन आर्क है, हिमालयन रीजन जो है, वो जो पहले जोन 5 में था, जोन 4 में कुछ था, दैट हैज नाउ बीन पुट एंटायरली इन जोन 6, विच इज ए जोन ऑफ हाईएस्ट सेस्मिक हजार्ड कैटेगरी. ये जो कैटेगरी है जोन 6, इट इज द कैटेगरी ऑफ हाईएस्ट सेस्मिक हजार्ड कैटेगरी. तो इसमें सारा हिमालयन रीजन हमने अभी डाल दिया है. नेक्स्ट, 61% ऑफ द कंट्री इज इन मॉडरेट टू हाई रिस्क zone, right? 61% of the country is in moderate to high risk zone, and this is the map. This is the new map wherein you can see that ये जो dark color area है हिमालयन आर्क का, वो सारा का सारा एरिया जोन 6 में चला गया है, इंक्लूडिंग अंडमान एंड निकोबार एंड दिस रीजन ऑफ कच्छ. ये सारा रीजन आ गया है अभी जोन 6 में. फाइन. So with that, I conclude our discussion of disaster management. Thank you. Okay. So that is about our discussion of disaster management. I hope you were able to understand this subject. Thank you. See, it's not that all the disasters are important. It's not that all the disasters are important. Chemical disasters and all, they're not even let's say they're not even discussed in the documents of NDMA. See, this subject is little more inclined towards the informative part, right? Causes इफेक्ट को छोड़ के बाकी की जो सारी चीजें हैं वो इंफॉर्मेशन है, वो आपको याद रखनी होगी. ठीक है, you'll have to remember those things. For example, what we are doing for management of different disasters, what NDMA is suggesting. तो वो थोड़ा सा ये ऐसा सब्जेक्ट है जहाँ पे आपको ज़्यादा स्कोप नहीं है खेलने का, right? You won't be able to do much innovation in this subject. Whatever government is doing, that you will have to accept. Fine. So it is that kind of subject. ठीक है, so make sure you keep on updating these notes. अगर कुछ developments होती है, नए नए instances अगर आपको देखने को मिलते हैं, add those things. अगर कोई नया step लिया जाता है तो वो भी आप add कर सकते हो इन notes में. ठीक है. Cyclone cover how much area? See, the diameter of cyclone varies. It is from 150 to 300 kilometers, like that. जो डायमीटर होती है साइक्लोन की वो 150 टू 300 किलोमीटर्स तक होती है. ठीक है. प्लीज प्रोवाइड अस पीवाईक्यू एंड एक्सपेक्टेड क्वेश्चन सीरीज. ठीक है. थैंक यू. मोस्टली कम फ्रॉम वाटर एंड क्लाइमेट डिजास्टर. यस, अगर आप पीवाईक्यूज देखेंगे तो मोस्टली कौन से क्वेश्चंस हमने देखे थे? लैंडस्लाइड पे क्वेश्चन था, ड्रॉट पे क्वेश्चन था, अर्थक्वेक पे क्वेश्चन था, राइट? तो ऐसे डिजास्टर, साइक्लोन पे क्वेश्चन, क्लाउड बर्स्ट पे क्वेश्चन, ऐसे डिजास्टर पे ज़्यादा क्वेश्चन है. नहीं, अर्बन फायर्स एंड ऑल इट्स नॉट वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट. टू मॉडल आंसर्स अभी तो क्वेश्चन नहीं है मेरे पास, बट लेट मी पुट इट इन दी सम काइंड ऑफ डॉक्यूमेंट. ठीक है, मैं एक आपको दे दूंगा 2 मॉडल आंसर्स. या जी, मॉडल आंसर्स में क्या होता है? मॉडल आंसर्स में फॉर एग्जाम्पल इफ देर इज ए क्वेश्चन why Himalayan, suppose there is a question, why Himalayan region, and this was PYQ, why Himalayan region is more vulnerable to landslides than Western Ghats. ये क्वेश्चन था, 2 बार पूछा गया है. ठीक है, तो हाउ यू कैन स्टार्ट विद दिस क्वेश्चन, हाउ यू कैन स्टार्ट फॉर दिस क्वेश्चन? You can write the definition. In short, write the definition that landslide is the disaster that occurs because of the sudden movement of debris of rock, soil, vegetation, etc., triggered by the events like earthquake, then floods, then deforestation, blasting impact of the infrastructure. So these activities trigger landslide. So आपने वो introduction में दे दिया. Then in the body part you have to discuss the causes for why landslides are more in Himalayan regions than the Western Ghats. तो वो सारे 4-5 पॉइंट जो आपको पता है वो लिखोगे. आपकी वो यंग माउंटेन्स है, यंग या यूथफुल रिवर्स हैं यहाँ पे, ब्लास्टिंग के लिए, ब्लास्टिंग बहुत यूज़ होता है फॉर इंफ्रास्ट्रक्चर एक्टिविटी, ओवर ग्रेजिंग हो रहा है इस रीजन में, डिफॉरेस्टेशन हो रहा है इस रीजन में, अर्थक्वेक प्रोन रीजन है. तो वो सारे रीजन्स आप एक के नीचे एक ऐसे 5-6 पॉइंट्स आप लिख दोगे. एंड देन इन कंक्लूजन यू कैन हाईलाइट दैट because of these reasons Himalayan region is more vulnerable than Western Ghats, and hence the government authorities have started number of initiatives like National Landslide Risk Mitigation Strategy to control the occurrence of events like landslide. So that way you can write the answer, right? So that can be the model answer. कोल्ड वेव की एनडीएमए गाइडलाइन हमने पढ़ी है प्रतिभा, राइट? कोल्ड वेव की एनडीएमए गाइडलाइन हमने पढ़ी है. यू कैन गो थ्रू. अभी ठीक है, मैं ये दिखा देता हूँ. वी हैव डिस्कस्ड इट. सो वी हैव टॉक्ड अबाउट इट, प्रतिभा. ठीक है, थैंक यू. ये लिखे तो आंसर का वेटेज बढ़ेगा. ये लिखे तो मतलब हाँ ऑब्वियसली ऑब्वियसली, अगर आपके पास डेटा है, अगर आपके पास डेटा है, मैंने रेफर भी किया है, राइट, यू कैन स्टार्ट विद द डेटा। तो इट इज़ नॉट स्पेशली फॉर हिमालयन रीजन, ओवरऑल डेटा भी है, तो वो हमने रेफर किया है, तो वो आप यूज़ कर सकते हो। ठीक है, उसमें अगर आपने डेटा लिखा उसमें लिख सकते हो मोस्ट ऑफ दिस एरिया फॉल्स अंडर हिमालयन रीजन, ऐसा लिख के आप स्टार्ट कर सकते हो। फाइन, सो आई होप इट इज क्लियर। AI to read disaster management, how can I use AI to read disaster management? AI for example conclusions में, right, you can use AI for conclusion. Often these are the subjects geography related subjects में conclusion लिखना एक task है, तो AI का यूज कर सकते हो फॉर गुड कंक्लूजन्स। ठीक है, तो हाँ, थैंक यू, थैंक यू। So I conclude our discussion. Fine. All the best. All the best. Thank you.